as usual, I'm sliding into home plate at the last minute, so I'm still changing our topics here in our list. Uh, Pretty much, we're going to talk about
I
what the Jimmie Davis Bridge and elections, or what?
Man, I'm telling you, the topics, the swamp, pantologist tweets. Good grief, that's next week's show. We got Sheriff Whittington coming on next week. We
Oh yeah, we got a lot to talk about with that too. But we've got pretty good show lined up tonight, and I think I have our show number and our title of our show correct, and that is the Secretary of State will be with us here in just a little bit.
Yes, sir. So if you were somebody or you're somebody who is wondering or where we're going with elections in Louisiana, how we vote, how it takes place, and maybe even if you're wondering kind of where we were in 2020, or you're one of those folks that maybe like me that has their reservations about the election in 2020. I mean, tonight's the show for you. In fact, probably a lot of people didn't realize, and I can't believe I'm going to say this with the actual Secretary of State going to be on our show, but we actually stuffed a ballot. Rex, do you remember that?
Oh yes, and I want to be crystal clear for any law enforcement that may be listening. I just videoed that. That's all I did. I wouldn't throw you under the bus that much. You're right, Duke. We did stuff a ballot. I don't think we ever actually mailed it or turned it in, right?
Yeah,
We
we
just,
did.
oh, we did. Okay. Whoops.
No, no, no. No, 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 no. We didn't mail it. We didn't mail it.
Okay.
We didn't do anything like that. In fact, that election was over, dead and gone. But we
Right.
just wanted to see whether or not the rumors were true. Could
Yeah.
you actually do it? And looked to me
Well,
like you could do it.
yeah, and full disclosure, we're not recommending that anybody, for any reason, stuff or alter any sort of ballot for those attorneys and
Yeah.
all that are listening. Okay.
So Jimmie Davis Bridge, are we going to jump right off into that and roll
I
with it?
say we go ahead. We got about a dozen people watching, and I'm still trying to get tech stuff pulled up here and make sure we're online good and all that. But yeah, let's just roll with it. Let's dive off in the swimming pool,
Okay.
or let's dive off the bridge and bungee jump. When are we going to be able to bungee jump? Do we have any news on that?
Now, apparently, the opportunity for us to bungee jump is going to happen. If you remember, in one of the last shows, we reported that Senator Barrow Peacock was trying to get an amendment to a House bill down there to exempt the Jimmie Davis Bridge and from being a state park. And we reported that it says in the state law that you have to have a minimum of 250 acres for it to be a state park.
Right.
Well, the reports to us were that making that amendment had an uphill climb in the legislature. That it
Right.
was the success of that was in doubt. Well, lo and behold, Senator Peacock got it done.
Really?
He
You
got it
got to be
done. Yeah,
kidding.
I
So
kid you not.
we're one step closer to bungee jump, and we're going to have to try to see, folks, if we can get Louisiana's Secretary of State to commit to bungee jumping with us. That would be awesome. We'll ask him and see.
That would be. So, all you Sobo folks and South Shreveport folks, what y'all need to know is that you're probably going to get the opportunity to bungee jump off of the old Jimmie Davis Bridge. Now, Bossier City and Shreveport and, Caddo Parish, y'all are going to have to put some resolutions together pretty quick saying that you'll pick up the trash. The Bossier Parish Police Jury's done already beat you to the punch, but to make this deal happen, your elected officials over there are going to have to get on the stick and get it done.
Yeah, got to put the pressure on them, folks, and let's get this deal over and done with, so we can quit talking about the Jimmie Davis Bridge, accept how much fun we're having bungee jumping, and eventually getting the squirrel suits out and doing the dives off of it.
Yeah, Secretary of
Right.
State saying, "What have I gotten myself into?
What kind
What
of
in the
crazy
world?"
show is this? Okay, so shall we go ahead and let's just dive right
Let's
in and bring our Louisiana Secretary of State on board with us and roll with it?
let's go.
All right, so let me see if I can hit the right button here, and presto. Can you hear us?
I can hear y'all. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Glad to have you on the show.
Good to be here with y'all. I think I'm a little worried about the bungee jumping.
Well, I got to ask you before Duke gets into the tough questioning. So, are you up to at least considering bungee jumping with us once we have the linear park, formerly known as the Jimmie Davis Bridge? It'll be a state park. We'll make sure, we try to adhere to as much safety stuff as we can. Are you committed to maybe doing a fundraiser and we'll bungee jump?
I will work to consider that and look at how much money we could raise for a good charity up up there in Bossier and see if we can't do some bungee jumping.
That's close enough. Thank you, sir.
That's
Was
what
that
I'm
a good
talking about.
political answer?
Close enough. Good political answer. Go ahead, dude.
Oh, you're a trooper. You're a trooper, I'll tell you. Well, Kyle, how long have you been the Secretary of State? I mean, I know I've voted for you every time, but how long have you been? Because I can't even remember.
Yeah, it seems like a lifetime ago, given everything we've been through. So May of 2018, I took over after my predecessor resigned, then ran for the seat in the November election of 2018, and won in the runoff of December 2018. Then I had to turn around and run for the full 4-year term in 2019, in the fall of 2019. So it's been since May of 2018, and prior to that, I served 8 years as first assistant to the previous secretary.
So, and we'll do the softball stuff first. Oh, go ahead. We got a little bit of lag going on, a little technical difficulty, but
yeah.
All right. So, give us just a quick overview, and for those watching that may not know, what are the general duties of the Secretary of State? What all are you responsible for the most part?
So, constitutionally, I'm required to preserve state records through the state archives. We're also charged with helping local governments and other state agencies to preserve records and then allow them through a retention schedule to destroy those records that aren't necessary, but also determine which records should be considered permanent records and kept on a permanent basis. Then we also obviously preserve records that are old for the state. We have a preservation piece. We also temporarily house documents for other state agencies that need assistance in that, and then we provide a service if someone wants public records and we're storing those records. Then we'll dig those records out and help the agency. The other part, obviously, I have 9 museums around the state. Louisiana Shreveport Exhibit Museum, the Oil and Gas Museum there in All City, and the Mansfield Female College in Mansfield, and then also Germantown Museum up just north of Minden. So, those are just a few of them. And so we preserve those. Those are ones that were neglected over time, or Fox McKithen or Jay Darden took into the system. I also obviously have the commercial division. All businesses that want to do business in the state of Louisiana have to file, whether they're inside the state or outside the state. They file with my office, so we keep a business registry. We created the Go Biz portal to reduce the red tape for businesses that want to to work in Louisiana, entrepreneurs, small businesses, so that when you come to my site and start your business, we're taking information not only just for us, but we're mostly taking information for the Department of Revenue and the Department of Workforce Development, which is the old Department of Labor. And so we compile all that information, we send it to the other 2 agencies, and then they contact you. And it's a way so that people don't have to physically or hang on the phone with the other 2 agencies, and they're able to communicate directly. Also, we obviously, I'm the chief elections officer for the state of Louisiana. I think probably the most, not probably, but the most important title that I hold as Secretary of State. I oversee all the elections. Louisiana is a different state than most. We're a top-down state, so all the policy is made at the top, and then we implement it and work with the local clerks of court and registrars of voters to implement all the election laws and voter registration laws, and obviously the elections themselves.
Excellent. So you got a ton of responsibilities, more than I even realized. So appreciate that information. All right.
I'm sorry, I've got one more that's really important too. I oversee the commissioning of all non-attorney notaries in the state of Louisiana, which is an important position in Louisiana, unlike other states where they're just witnessing documents, if you will, or certifying documents. In Louisiana, a notary can do almost anything up to, but not including representing you in the court of law. So notaries have an immense amount of power in the state of Louisiana, and so we protect that, and we want to protect the people of Louisiana. So we lead that effort and the testing process for non-attorney notaries.
Oh, well, just a few minutes into the show, and I've already learned a ton. Duke, you're up.
Well, one thing, if I get the opportunity to vote for your office and for you to take over the Department of Revenue, I'm voting in favor of it. I'm just letting you know, okay? Because
I don't
it's a
think I'll be.
whole lot.
I don't think I'll be asking for that power, but thanks anyway.
I love the business thing. Easy. It's ease. I mean, it really is, because I have to do it in some other states, and by far it's the easiest in our state in that regard. But when it comes to the Department of Revenue, no, it's not easy. In fact, they could use some lessons from you guys. and you can tell them I said that. I don't care.
I'm
Anyway.
sure somebody will spread the word off of this interview right here.
Yeah, might be a couple of people that listen to it. We've got a question already. So, and this one, well, anyway, so I'll go ahead and put it up there. We won't do any, just crazy gotcha questions, but we've already had one from Kara Lowry, which would be Duke's better half. She says, how can we pass legislation for a business name to be revoked if granted in error? Kara, did you file a business in error? What happened?
That is probably the most interesting question I've ever received, even more so than any of the elections questions. Um, if someone filed an error, they can dissolve that business. If she's the individual that filed it, or she's asking on behalf of somebody, they can dissolve that business and then recreate it. Or if the name that they actually want, they can go on and file for a DBA name or a trade name. And so we provide for that. So if Karen wants to call my office, 225-922-2880, and ask for either Amanda or Jewel in commercial, they can walk her through the process of addressing that issue. And if they don't have the answer, then they'll give her to my legal team, and we can see what's going on.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Well, Secretary Kyle, do we have secure elections in Louisiana?
I do believe we have secure elections in Louisiana. Do I think we can have more secure elections or a higher level of security? Absolutely. Since 2014, before becoming secretary, I was fighting for and pushing for a paper trail. So any new voting system, I think, has to be paper based. It gives us, the voters and the state, two things. One, the voter gets to verify their vote before casting it. And two, we have an audit trail that we can make sure that it is an accurate election. And that's what I want. And I think that's what the people of Louisiana deserve. And we just need to get through the bureaucratic process and get to that solution.
Yeah, I watched in one of the committee hearings, and that's a whole nother thing in itself of how it got to that point. But I think you were having some dialogue with Colonel Waldron, and we're talking about, can you imagine? Yeah, the Constitution, sets that the legislatures of each state are responsible for, determining how we have our election processes. But could you imagine having all of your legislators try to debate and argue the details of how you're going to conduct your election? Could you imagine that?
Well, yes, it actually occurred in the session of 2021. The legislature, we we went into an RFP process to update our voting system, to update our equipment, and without realizing what was coming down the pike um, after the presidential election, we were concerned that if we didn't engage in the process of trying to replace our equipment, then we would have a serious issue. But we had no idea. We knew there were problems in other states, but we had no real idea because nobody was talking about it other than the media was pouncing on it. There were court actions here, there, and yonder, and judges were denying the president's, then President Trump's legal team their motions. And it was like, total chaos. And I guess it wasn't quite like the 2000 Gore Bush election where it was focused on one state. It was focused on so many different states, and all the different changes that were made post COVID. And Louisiana didn't experience that to the degree that other states did. We kept it to a minimum. We focused on our policies and procedures, by the way, which I want to alert folks. We've done so well in Louisiana that the Heritage Foundation has ranked Louisiana 7th in the nation in election integrity. And to get higher, we have to do things like outlaw Zuckerbucks, which we are working on that now. There's another bill in the Senate by Representative Miguez that hopefully will get final passage today or tomorrow. We need to up our game on non-citizen voting, and there's a constitutional amendment by Representative Villio that I have that's sitting in the Senate now, waiting on final passage. We got 2/3 vote in the House, which I was excited about. I think we can get it, because there's language in our Constitution that says you only have to be a resident of the state of Louisiana. And it doesn't speak about citizenship for the United States. And we looked around the country and we saw other municipalities or other states having the same wording in their constitutions, and yet we saw municipalities allowing non-citizens to vote in either their school board elections or their local elections. I mean, small places like Montpelier, Vermont, but we know that's a liberal state, as high as California, San Francisco, and New York City. We don't want that in Louisiana. We want United States citizens and citizens of Louisiana voting. So we're clarifying that. I hope that the Senate will pass it so that it can go to a vote of the people this fall. Those are the issues we're dealing with. We're tightening up our policies and procedures where we felt like we needed more documentation, more tight rein in how things are dealt with by the parish boards of election supervisors, like making sure in small communities, I would imagine in places in Bossier Parish and Caddo and others around Webster Parish, in small communities, the registrar and the clerk know most of the people. And so if somebody forgot to put something on their absentee ballot flap, oh, I know that person, they just forgot. So the board votes to approve that ballot. Well, if you have that going on, how can you question it in one part of the state and not the other? You can't ask for election integrity in New Orleans if you're not asking for it in Bossier. And so we've made that a priority and passed legislation that will require everything, no judgment call. It's either there or it's not. If it's not, reject the ballot, period. That gives the voters a level of confidence and integrity in the election to feel like people are voting in the right manner, and we're not expanding mail voting. We're creating a secure system and building off of everything that we've built over the years in modern elections in Louisiana.
Well, I'd like to chime in for just a second because I was on the Board of Election Supervisors in Bossier Parish for several years as an appointee of the Republican PAC up here. And so I want to assure everybody that's watching from Bossier that when we had to make those decisions, we were cut and dry down the line. It's either signed or it's not. It's clear or it's not. There's a witness signature or there's not. But you're right that probably, and I can't speak for the rest of the boards, but you're right. Probably in some of these other areas and parishes, there may have been some of that going on. So having a very clear-cut, consistent set of rules that, which to me they're pretty clear cut anyway, that you need to go by will help improve some integrity or perception of
Absolutely.
integrity.
Exactly. And I wasn't, please, I wasn't accusing anybody. I was just using
Right.
that as
Right.
examples. But, we absolutely, what's key to our system in Louisiana is being consistent and every parish doing the same things, following the same rules, following the same laws, and implementing them in the same way helps across the board. And that's why you see in Louisiana, everybody votes on the same machines on election day. Everybody's voting on the same machines during early voting, and everybody's following the same absentee ballot process in every parish if people vote by absentee ballot. And that's what I think keeps the glue to our system because we're able to then look for areas of problems. And when we audit, then we're able to see who's following what and who's not, and where we need to up training, either for the commissioners or for the early voting commissioners, for the registrars, for their staff, for the clerks. It doesn't matter. Everybody in the process, we need to keep our game up because the people are depending upon it.
Now, stepping back just a little bit and talking about the legislature and back when the RFP was going, you actually had, I think, two RFPs. Now, you took a little bit of a beating on that because some people suggested that you were trying to steer things, or either you were trying to control things. But it was during that time that the 2020 election, and there was a lot of stuff in the media and a lot of speculation, a lot of rumors and things like that. I mean, you know, at that time, I don't think that anybody, and I'm just going to say Dominion. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but what I'm saying is that around that time in the start, nobody really had any issues with Dominion. The Dominion was the only game in town, I think, essentially. And, then everything kind of came after that. Your process was already kind of going, but people made suggestion that you were kind of steer things. I mean, what was the real deal? I'm sure you have something to say about that.
Well, the real deal was very simple. One, there were problems with the Office of State Procurement in both of the RFPs in terms of how things were handled. The second issue is that this is a pretty good sized contract. And the voting companies, voting machine companies, or voting system companies, however you want to look at it, is a very competitive market because it's a very small niche market, and when they smell blood in the water, they're jumping on it. They're like sharks. They want whatever flesh they can get so that they can make sure that they win the contract, and that's what happened the first round, and that's I'll blame it on the OSP director on the second round because instead of dealing with a comment period where we are allowed to take suggestions from companies so that it can be as competitive as possible, but not to violate what Louisiana wants or thinks they want, she took it and she said, "Oh, it's a conflict, it's a contest, as they call it." And then so the companies, once again, the two that don't have the contract, two major ones that don't have the contract, started fighting and acting like sharks again. And so, the best thing to do at that point in time is I spoke to the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House and said, "Look, this is just it's already out of control. I've complained to the administration that I didn't think the Office of State Procurement is up to the task for such a large deal. They've messed up a number of state bids in other agencies, and this is just too important." So we pulled back. I met with numerous constituents groups who are asking for, please, let's make this a more transparent process. Let's have more public input. We're worried. And that was the major thing that hit me hard, is that I didn't realize how concerned people were because what they were seeing in other states post the 2020 presidential election, they were automatically applying to Louisiana, which wasn't the case. But you have to have a dialogue with the people of Louisiana to help them understand it, but also to hear what they want. and that was a major learning lesson for me because the Secretary of State's office has been such a non-controversial office for many, many years. We do our jobs, we do our jobs well, especially in elections, and so when we started getting pushback, I said, well, wait a minute, we've got to hear what the people need, what they want, what their concerns are, and then we go from there. And so that became the birth of the Voting System Commission. That became the process that we're now dealing with and will end sometime at the end of this month, hopefully. And then we can start the process of moving through the bureaucratic process of creating standards, getting approval for those, having public hearings on that, more transparency, and then going to the next step of an RFP and putting that out. And so I want to invite all Louisiana citizens on June 27th and 28th. There's going to be a public viewing, question period, you name it. It's basically a trade show. It's open to everyone at the Louisiana State Museum across from the state capitol. That all vendors who want to participate will have their equipment, their voting systems on display, and anybody can come and ask questions and look at it. And then the next day we'll have a public hearing, take public comments, and see where the Voting System Commission wants to recommend to my office for moving forward.
So let me ask you this, because that sounds very interesting. I didn't realize it was going to be, like well, I hate to say a festival for voting for voting machine vendors and all that. So how many? I mean, we've all heard Dominion. How many other vendors or potential vendors are there in the voting machine process? Is it like Dominion's the main name in the game, or are there 10 other companies, or any idea?
So there are, I would say there's four major, maybe five, but four in terms of their concentration in the marketplace. Dominion, ES&S, Hart, InterCivic, and Smartmatic. And those are the big ones. But there are others out there, and we have a number of them registered. I believe we have 10 or 12 registered to come. And there's no registration fee. We just want them to sign up. And so we have contact information and whatnot. But we mailed it out to and emailed it out to everybody that contacted our office, but also the Office of State Procurement's list of interested parties, so that we made sure we covered everybody. We didn't want to leave anybody out. And we, I believe we advertised it on our website so that people who may not have gotten those notices would know what's going on, so that they can participate. We'll have a number of mail-based systems. We'll have a number of paper-based systems. And then I think what you'll see is the big ones will have some sort of form of machine and paper process to promote to the citizens. So I look forward to it. I've seen most of them, not all of them. But, we need to make sure that we get this right. And paper-based is, I've been very clear, I want a paper-based system so that we can have the accuracy and the voter verification on the front end, and accurate auditing on the back end, because I think that there's no other way to do it.
Well, are you talking about like a redundant paper-based system, or hybrid type? Or are you talking about completely? Because when you say paper-based, I just go right back to 2000 and the stupid hanging Chad.
Well, it could be any of those. So I have to work. So you have the disability community that has to have some ability to be able to vote as independently as possible. A full paper-based system won't allow for that. So all paper ballots won't allow for that. So it'll probably have to be a hybrid process. But I will tell you that we're working with our local partners. We're getting input. There's a lot of concern as this is built up. There's concern I get a lot of questions of why are we going backwards? And I said, I don't think we're going backwards. I think what we've got to have is, there's no doubt we have to have paper as part of the process, whether it's a ballot marking device creating a full ballot, whether it's a ballot marking device creating a summarized sheet of the voters' choices, and those go into a tally mechanism, either one. There's also, of course, the full paper ballot hand mark process. that's available, and a lot of states have with an electronic tallying process, but also with the audit piece that's necessary after the election. I want whatever system we go to, I want to make sure that we have unofficial results on election night, like we've always had, and I say always, like we have had in modern times that people have grown to expect. Because otherwise, if it's delayed, as we have just seen in post 2020 in Pennsylvania and Oregon, where they're still counting ballots, or they were still counting them last week, um, and the balance of those races were in jeopardy between two candidates, very close races. That's serious, and I don't want people to think that anybody's cooking anything because it's taken longer to count the ballots than it should.
Yeah, so, and I just want to give me 1 second, Duke, and I'll get off my soapbox, I promise. So, a couple of interesting things to me. One, I hope that one or more of these vendors have some solutions that tend to lean towards open source because, unfortunately, and look, nothing against Dominion because Louisiana's been using Dominion now for, I don't know, what, a couple of decades. And most people don't realize that those machines are not online. If I remember correctly, the only time any information is transmitted online is when it goes from the courthouses and the clerk of court or registrar of voters' offices and is transmitted by a state employee to the state through their VPN or dedicated line or whatever you'll have set up. And to my knowledge, that's the only time those votes are ever online, but they got to reconcile with the paper that we, as a former member of the voting board, that we all have to sign off on and say, okay, yeah, all these numbers match. So one, I hope that, there's a problem with security through obscurity, which is what Dominion and a lot of other companies practice. I mean, look, Microsoft practices it, even Apple, and I'm a huge fan of Apple stuff. But the problem is you can't go in and audit and verify that code. I'm not saying that Dominion is doing anything wrong or malicious, but it's trust and then verify, or well, whatever Reagan said. I got it wrong.
That's the motto of my staff: trust but verify.
Right.
So we have to verify, and of course, Ronald Reagan made that slogan very popular with the conservative movement when he became president. I trust my staff, but we verify checks and balances throughout. I trust and I work closely with the clerks, but we still trust and we verify. The commissioners, we love our commissioners, but you've got to verify. And there are processes that everybody's got to go through. There's training that we all have to take, and we have to verify. And you're absolutely correct. And it's not one company over another. They all have to be verified, and there has to be a transparent process. I'm slightly familiar with open source. I've looked at Bitcoin and things like that, the technology that uses that as well. I think that that's the future, but I don't think that's where we are now. And
Not to interrupt you, but I'm not talking about using blockchain technology, which may be a
okay,
possibility. I'm talking about
okay,
open source like in the Linux community and the Unix community, okay, where every bit of code that Linus Torvalds has put online, which Linux powers the vast majority of the internet, by the way, it's certainly not Windows and it's not Apple stuff, okay? The truth is that Linux and Unix, actually Unix, power most of the internet. All the big servers, all of Amazon stuff is all related to that. And that is all open source code. It's all posted so that people who know how can go through and review that. The common everyday person is not going to know how to code, but there are people that do. So that's why I would suggest that. Um,
I will
so,
say this, Rex. So I've been working with and communicating with regularly since I learned of the issue in Georgia and the Georgia lawsuit and the Halderman report related to that. So I've been working with Dr. Alex Halderman, um, communicating with him and figuring out what are the things that we can do to verify that, one, we're protecting our system. Two, we're protecting every individual machine until we can get to this new voting system. I want to know all the vulnerabilities. To know the vulnerabilities creates the opportunity for us to mitigate, protect, and defend, if you will, um, our election systems. Until we can get to that verifiable piece, that we have to bid out. And so I am looking. I leave no stone unturned. I've been working with a lot of patriots around the state. I will continue to do so. We take reports that we are given. We take reports that we see in the press. We take information that we get from our federal partners or our state fusion center, and we look at everything in depth. And we're not going to pretend that things can't go wrong. We're not going to pretend that someone with malicious intent, whether domestic or foreign, wouldn't try to disrupt our elections in some form or fashion, or try to change our results, or try to play games with us. We are going to stay vigilant as we have, and we will continue to do so. And so I'll work with anybody to look at everything. And if this is one of those solutions that you're describing to me, because that's kind of over my head, I'm not that technical of a person. They don't even let me tweet, so things like that. But anyway, I just want the people of Louisiana to know I'm not so naive to think people aren't looking for ways to disrupt our elections or to cause us to question the outcomes of our elections. But we will constantly be transparent in how we're doing things. We do have to protect ourselves. Obviously, we can't just put everything out there. But if there's some sort of way for us to open, have a closed group, maybe assigned by law. I know the auditors came in, the legislative auditors group came in. They watched all of our processes and procedures, the same things that you participated in as a board member, from A to Z, everything from beginning to end in last fall's elections, even with the Hurricane Ida. And we passed with flying colors. They did say we need a little bit more documentation with some of the things that you were describing in terms of making sure the board members are signing off on everything. And not letting staff do it for them. That's an important piece. We didn't know that was going on in some parishes, but we're fixing that. We're going to make sure that, like we said, everything's on the ballot flap. It's not going to be left up to the discretion of the registrar to send it to the board for challenge. It either is there or it's not. If it's not, cure it. If it can't be cured, challenge, period. Those are the things that are just small things that goes over the head of voters, but is important. And then we're dealing with the bigger things. But, my message is I'm not naive as an election official. I know that people want, whether foreign or domestic, enemies of our republic want to destroy us. And we have to do everything we can to stay vigilant, protect ourselves, and move to a more secure system as quickly as we possibly can in a non-chaotic environment, which means orderly fashion, education, training, and protection. And that's where I am as Secretary of State for Louisiana.
All right, one more thing, Duke, and I swear I'll get off my soapbox this time. So I've
By
got
all means.
I've got something here that I think a lot of us can relate to. So I don't know if you've ever bass fished or tournament fished, but we solved some of these problems in the bass tournament world. At our weigh-ins, when we take our fish out of our boat and we walk up to the scales and weigh them in at least at the bigger tournaments, not the smaller tournaments, but at the bigger tournaments, they give us a paper receipt. Because if something happens to their system, we can challenge and say, no, this is what my fish weighed. 2 ounces might make the difference in $10,000. So another possible, suggestion, since I'm doing it before the open comment period here, would be something along those lines, so that when I come out of that voting booth, and I've gone in there and I've selected and cast my vote, that I know the machine, at least at that point in time, this is what the machine told me I voted for. And so if there's a discrepancy, at least, and I think, that goes back to what you were saying about adding in some more paper into the mix, at least I, as a voter, have a way to go back and say, whoa, something's not right here.
Well, and Secretary Ardoin, I'm gonna argue with Rex here, and you can watch, because me and him have had this argument. Rex said something key right there. He said, the machine can show me how I voted. Me, on the other hand, I don't want the machine telling me how I voted. I want to see a piece of paper to where I can see how I voted, that I marked it. I don't care if the machine reads it after that. That's fine. Use the machine. But I don't want a machine making the mark for me. I want to be able to know that my vote, I put my mark on it. That
Fair,
that takes a
fair,
that
fair
takes a
point.
that takes a circuit out from in between.
Fair point, but
Well,
the machine's still going to be in the mix. I want the machine, so just like when I go weigh in and it says I have my measly little 10.45 pounds, okay, from those scales or from that system, and I'm really simplifying this, I know. I want that voting machine to tell me who I voted for, and I don't have to wonder, I wonder if Dominion's back there jacking with that code.
well, y'all bring up two very interesting points. So the Rex, I would say to you this: in that bass fishing tournament, you can't go sell that ticket. It means
Right,
nothing to anyone but you.
right.
In elections, someone can walk out of that polling location and go sell that piece of paper.
True enough, but they can sell it before too, just like I could in the tournament potentially.
But, I mean, potentially, but it
That
enhances
they do it.
opportunity to encourage fraudulent voting and to encourage buying votes, because you don't get your beer, and we've investigated places where, you know, a large, you know, a, a big boy would give you, uh, that would be your reward, and
I see.
so it's that bothers me.
Well,
And
here's the
then
and
Rex, I mean, Duke, I don't disagree with you in terms of where you are. I think that if a voter wants to be able to do that, they should have that opportunity, um, to hand mark their ballot and then put it through a scanner. That is the whole point. There's options for people who want to choose. The question is, can we afford all options, or how do we deal with that? And that's what we're going to be investigating and looking at. Do I think we're looking at $100 million contract again? No, I do not. Um, what I will say is that the verification by the voter without a QR code, without a barcode, a simple reading of the markings, whether it's machine marked or individually marked, needs to be verified by the voter before it's tabulated, and that's really the only two options that we have, quite frankly. And I think we're going to end up with a hybrid piece, because I've got to deal with the disability community, and then I know that there's those who want to hand mark their ballots and then put it into a tabulator, so we have election results, but so that we can verify the accuracy of those tabulators. And then there's also the idea that's being floated around, and I'm not totally opposed to it. I don't know that I want it, and I'm probably going to open Pandora's box here, but there is the idea being floated around, and I like aspects of it, which is, and Rex, I think you'll appreciate this as a former board member. I believe at the end of each early voting day, there ought to be a certification of the tallies for that day, not publicly rendered, not sent out to the public, because I think you then create political chaos with campaigns. But if you can, if the board will certify at the end of every day, we had this number of voters show up, we had this number of total votes cast, and here's the tally. Everybody signed off. You're sworn to secrecy, penalty of law, felony, whatever, if you report it to anybody. And then on election day, when the board reconvenes, each day's tallies has to match the total for all of early voting.
I was
Good point.
going there a while ago, and Rex got you off on a squirrel trail. But
Fish trail.
yeah, before yeah, before COVID, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Kyle. Is it Kathy Landry? Is that who it is in your office? I think one of the attorneys, whatever. I
No.
can't remember. I was working with a lady with your office about
Oh,
getting some amended legislation. On
Laney Durio, Laney,
I
or
can't remember.
Marietta Norton. No,
I thought
go
her
ahead.
last name was I thought her last name was Landry, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Oh, Nancy
Um,
Landry. Yeah, Nancy
Nancy,
Landry, my
yeah,
first assistant.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had talked with Nancy and we were talking about signature verification. And I was wanting more aggressive. And of course, COVID came along and just everything went out the
Right.
windows. But if I recall correctly, y'all had some legislation that was going forward and y'all couldn't get to it that session. You were in favor of it, but the registrar of voters offices, the ladies that manage that across the state, they were opposed to it, and because they were like, we don't have the manpower and the ability to be able to do that in a lot of these offices across the state,
Right.
and doing it ahead of time so that they weren't, in especially some of the bigger parishes, I would say Orleans, on day of election trying to figure this out. And that's exactly what you just said. Why do we and I'm going to go to something else you said earlier. You said you wanted to know, and I think you were enunciating your opinion. You wanted to know the night of the election. Are we all so spoiled now that we have to know that night? I would argue I think now's the time to back away from that. To I would rather us have accuracy than speed. And if we need to back our date up to process things earlier to be able to come to a conclusion on that date, then so be it. But we self limit ourselves. Why do we have to do that?
Because unfortunately, I think it's just another piece of the suspicion and the distrust of government. In that, if we don't have results, I mean, right now I get questioned as to certain parishes. Why are they so late? Why are they so late? They're cooking the books, blah blah blah. They're trying to figure out how much votes they need to make up and then report, which is not true because we have mechanisms that uh, prevent or at least detect the potential acts that may create that perception. But if you don't have, if it takes days, for example, there are states. Look at New York, for example, and we're not New York, and we know that. But when it takes a month to figure out the winner of a congressional race, there's something wrong with that. You know, and I certainly agree with you. It shouldn't take a month. We have always said we prefer accuracy over speed, but the questions don't stop coming. And my concern is, and others, and of course, you can imagine people running for office want to know as soon as possible where they are in the process. What I will tell you this is we're going to look at, there's a study resolution that just passed the legislature asking the State Board of Election Supervisors to look at expanding the time between elections so it gives us more time because right now you're looking at a 10-day challenge period, a 15-day hold on everything, and yet we're still having to prepare for the very next election in 30 days. So if we're able to do that, we can holistically look at the whole system and say, okay, well, perhaps we should have a little bit more time to make sure the accuracy is there and the board has the time to look at things in more detail. But I will tell you, if we do that, there will be a push to allow for ballots to be counted that come in after the election closes. And I'm not for that either. So we have to be careful. It's sort of like dealing with a balloon. When you squeeze one in, the other one bulges out. And everywhere you squeeze, before you know it, the sucker's going to pop or it's going to deflate. And we don't want to go there.
Well, I would like to remind everybody as well that, and Stephanie's probably going to text me after this if she sees this show and kill me, but she's actually made this comment and invited people. They're open meetings up there when the Board of Election Supervisors meets. And the problem is nobody ever goes. And the public can go up there. I think, Duke, you've done it before. The public can go up on election night. You have to be sequestered in, not supposed to have a cell phone or device where you can communicate out and all that good stuff. But the public can go up there during the process and observe as well. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That is absolutely correct. It's always been a public meeting. What people don't like is being sequestered, but that's part of the integrity process to make certain that people aren't, because the counting starts early in the day. And so while the counting's going on, if someone, you can sort of get a feel sometimes, unless it's really, really close, you can sort of get a feel as you're counting, as to how some races are going. And people will want to transmit that information out because they want their candidate to win.
Yeah, you can
And
sway a race with that potentially.
that's exactly right, and that's part of election administration that can't be sold out. I did want to mention one other thing, if I may, on the previous issue that we discussed. So I've worked with Representative Cruz on a particular issue, and I'm working with our IT staff to see how quickly we could develop this and utilize it. And that's when someone appears to vote during early voting, that they, once they're checked in, they get a notification by email or text or both, depending upon that they have appeared to vote at the location that they appeared at, and they have cast their vote. Um, that would be a huge effort in alerting people if someone's trying to fraudulently vote on their behalf. Do we have a lot of that? No. Have we had a few cases of that? Yes. And it was typically the elderly parent voted in the stead of their child because they forgot that they had already voted. So we then challenged the early vote in those cases and deal with it appropriately, and make sure that the accuracy of the election is still there. But those are very few and far. They're so rare. But we need to look at those types of processes that we can do to enable voters to understand and know that there's some extra security features for them.
Well, in your opinion, and you know, I've watched every one of the committee meetings and watched them in detail, and you know, and to the point about, you know, people coming up their day of the election. I heard you make a comment talking about how in some places, you know, that it's hard to find a Republican, you know, to poll watch or to even be on the committee. That really kind of shocked me. That surprised me, but I agree with you. I do know how hard it is even to get people to work the elections those days. Um, that's a problem that you're fighting. You see that across the state, right?
Yes, um, especially in Democratic strongholds, there are, it's hard to find Republicans. In Republican strongholds, sometimes it's hard to find Democrats. Um, I, you know, I'm sure Rex just loved every big check that he got from his service
Oh
on the
yeah.
board of his whopping $50 every time they met, up to 6 meetings. And so, Rex, we just passed legislation today to give board members a pay raise. I can't remember, it's either $100 or $150 a meeting, because we have to have those people. They are critical to the integrity process of our election. And when we can't have them, then our parish elections, our state elections are in peril, because they're the counters, they're the talliers, they're the integrity police, if you will, for that election in that parish, and we can't afford to do it without them. Additionally, the commissioners, the law states that we are supposed to have at least one Republican, one Democrat, when available, at each polling location. We're supposed to even them out, and there are just some areas where we don't have any Republicans. Orleans Parish, or there's so few of them that they're spread so thin, and so our state has never been as partisan as it is now. So I think it's about training. But we did have legislation that the governor vetoed, that we were going to try to do a pilot program where we were going to do training for poll watchers and have at least a Republican and Democratic poll watcher in each precinct. And unfortunately, that didn't make it, and it wasn't reintroduced this session, to my knowledge. But we've got to look at that as more of a holistic approach. But until then, we have to depend upon the training of our commissioners. We have to depend upon processes that we put in place. We have to depend upon the training of our tallying teams, which are the early voting commissioners, and our parish board of election supervisors. And I think that we need to look at allowing for the Secretary of State in times of emergencies to be able to appoint people to serve on those parish boards where we can't get a quorum. If you can't get a quorum, how are we conducting business? I mean,
Well, and the
you know,
boards, a lot of people may not realize the boards select the commissioners.
that's right.
We did it by random drawing, with
That's
a
right.
list of names of people that are available and who have worked in the past and all that. But the boards select those commissioners as well, and the public can be there at those meetings.
That is right. Every meeting, every single meeting having to do with elections and putting on the elections and tallying votes is a public meeting. Anyone can attend those meetings. And I especially encourage people to go to the certification of the machines before they go out. That's a function of the board in each parish. It's a public meeting. It's announced. It's advertised, and they should go there, because what they will see will convince them that we're doing absolutely everything we can, and because that's where the testing of the machines are being done, and every machine is looked at, and the tapes for every machine are made sure that they've zeroed out that there's nothing on those machines that creates the perception of somebody's got a head start, because it's just not happening. And so then afterwards, they go back, and it's a public meeting, and they check the lifetime counter of the machine, which the number has to go up by the number of votes cast on that machine. They check the number of votes cast on the machine. They go over every race, and they sign off on everything, and everything's got to match. And we through the legislative auditors found that we could document things a bit more, and so we're moving into that process, and that will be in place for the fall election. I believe is when we have the effectiveness of it. So it is a transparent process. I think what has happened is, over the years, voters have had no major reason to question. The 2020 election created that doubt, concern, and rightfully so. People are asking questions. And you know what? I would rather an engaged, as difficult as it is, and Duke, we talked about it, the pressure cooker that I was in, a couple years ago or a year ago, it's not what I expected, but the bottom line is, having an engaged citizenry holds everybody accountable. And you may not like all the answers that we have for you, but the bottom line is, I may not like all the suggestions that people have, but I've got to listen, because we've got to get to a point where we're doing what is necessary to have confidence in the election. Is everybody going to be confident? No. But the bottom line is, if you don't have a vast majority, and I don't mean like 50% plus one, you've got to have a strong 75, 80% confidence level that that we're doing everything we can as election administrators to put on an accurate, secure, and transparent election, and that we're holding people accountable who break the law, just as we've done in at least 4 cases over the last several years. We have investigated, and held people accountable, gotten convictions for voter registration fraud, for coercion of elderly people voting, stealing ballots. We investigate, and we push for convictions. And I'm happy to say that the Attorney General and our teams have worked on 2 investigations, and both of those have been very successful in getting convictions.
Well, that's a perfect segue, because we had a question about that earlier, about prosecuting for voter fraud, and you just answered that. So I'm going to throw a question out there, and it's not really a gotcha at all, but I don't know if you have or have not seen the documentary by Dinesh D'Souza, 2,000 Mules. All right. If you hadn't, in that, basically, they've got mules, kind of like drug mules, that go around and drop, basically bags of ballots off at drop-off points. And according to the documentary, they get paid for doing that. Now, we all say, oh, yeah, we know all of that's going on. The problem is catching people and prosecuting them. So can you address what in Louisiana may help mitigate against something like that potentially going on here. And if somebody sees something, so somebody's watching the show and they happen to go to one of the board of supervisors meetings, or they're going to vote and they think they see something out of line, what's the process for reporting something as well?
First and foremost, you can go to my website. You can email us directly. Um, click on whatever button it is. Bottom line is to send us a message detailing what you've seen, or you can call my office, ask for the elections compliance unit, as we refer to it, the ECU. You can file a complaint, and then I now have 6 investigators around the state. I had only, for years, we only had 4. The legislature funded 2 more last year. So I now have 6. So I have 1 in every part of the state. And those individuals will go and investigate. They're all post certified. They're former law enforcement, some former troopers, and we take everything seriously. The other thing I would say is how and yes, I have seen the movie. I watched it very intently. In fact, I watched it with some constituents who I've been working with for over a year now on election integrity issues, and I watched it very intently. I was asked one question: "Are you surprised by that?" And I said, "No. We saw it live. We knew what was going on in other states, and we were complaining about it, but I was busy trying to keep it from happening in Louisiana," which is why Senator Mizell, under my request, authored legislation in 2020 prior to COVID, or maybe it was, yes, prior to COVID, and ended up being eventually signed, was does not allow for any political candidate or their campaign, any political party, any not-for-profit 501c3, any not-for-profit 501c4, any political action committee to be able to harvest absentee ballot requests or harvest absentee ballots. You can only witness 1 ballot if it's a non-family member. If it's an immediate family member, you can witness 2. And if you transmit or transfer those ballots to the registrar's office, which is the only place you can bring it, unless it's during early voting and you can hand it in person. But when you do that, you have to fill out a form identifying yourself, identifying your relationship with that individual, if it's mom or dad or grandmother or your child or whatever, and you have to show ID, and you have to sign that form. So we have a paper trail, we can audit it, we can investigate it, and that's why what happened, or what was shown, what was revealed in 2000 Mules is not happening in Louisiana. That's one. Additionally, we have refused to allow ballot boxes to be utilized in Louisiana. The New Orleans City Council sued me directly during the 2020, leading up to the 2020 election, wanting ballot boxes all over their parish. And I refused. I said the law doesn't allow it. You can have a ballot brought in person under the circumstances I just said. You can send your ballot by the United States Postal Service. You can send your ballot by FedEx. You can send your ballot by UPS. That's the only ways. Anything other than that is illegal and should be challenged. And we're making sure that that's occurring. So, the city of New Orleans didn't get their way, or Orleans Parish, their city council, because that's exactly what they wanted. And during COVID, all we did was we expanded the excuses that somebody could utilize to request a ballot. Our position has been, if you have to take up the effort, decide, I want to vote, under normal circumstances, you have to get up out of your chair, you have to go to the early voting site, or you have to go to your election day site, and you vote. To vote by mail, you have to request a ballot so that we know who it is, where that ballot's going, how can we track it, and are you who you say you are with your signature on the line under penalty of law? Period. That's how Louisiana dealt with COVID. We didn't want to mail out absentee ballot requests. That's what happened in Fulton County in Georgia. They sent out the absentee ballot requests, they harvested them, turned them in, knew when the ballots were being mailed out, and that's what you saw in that movie. That's how that's how I can't go partisan. That's how the election was changed in that state. Just like it was changed in Pennsylvania, where the Supreme Court went against the law and said, oh, yeah, you can count ballots for 3 days after. If they come in 3 days after, you can count them. Well, that's not what the law said.
Mhm.
That's what changes elections. And fortunately, what we did in Louisiana was enough for a liberal Obama federal judge to say, hey, they got it right the first time. We didn't want to do the same thing the second time, but she said if it was good enough for the first time, it's good enough for the second time. That was our backdrop. We had created a plan, and we knew, working with the Attorney General and outside counsel, that process was going to work. That was going to be enough to stop what potentially could have been detrimental in the state of Louisiana to election confidence, which would have been the Mule movie happening here, but it didn't.
Very, very
Well,
interesting.
I was following that, and didn't see you to compliment you or the folks kind of behind the scenes that were working. Y'all really did a good job, and you deserve praise for that. And I'm gonna jump ahead on one other thing and give you a compliment on the Aaron system. The moment the Aaron stuff kind of started jumping out there, y'all were proactive on that too.
I mean, Eric. Election Registration
Eric, I'm
Information
sorry.
Center. Eric, yeah, Aaron is
Yeah,
our
yeah.
is our in-state registration system. But no, you're right, Eric. And I'm learning more and more about it. I'm communicating with out-of-state folks, and my concern is even higher than it's ever been. But fortunately, I took the extraordinary steps early on. I've taken some criticism from colleagues around the country on it, but I, I try to be as deliberative as possible, but if I think that our voters' information is at risk, I'm not playing that game. I'm going to pull back. I'm going to reassess, and we're going to find ways, or to do it the way we used to do it. Bottom line is, I don't need to pump information through another system if somebody's collecting that data. And as I've learned, the fox is watching the hen house. All they're doing is providing a self-report. There's no independent auditor of who's working that data. I want independent security. It's being demanded of me as Secretary of State in the state of Louisiana. Why wouldn't I demand it of any other group? And so,
Yeah.
you know, thanks for the compliment. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm just doing my job, but I thank you for recognizing that, and many other people around the
Well,
state.
that's why I wanted to point it out, because I really don't think very people recognize the significance of that and the significance of that move. Because, I mean, I think arguably Louisiana may be the first state that really kind of took that bold action. I think you're the guy leading the
You're
way.
exactly right. We were like, I think we were the 10th state to join, but we joined under very different circumstances. And maybe we did it too fast, but our goal was we want the cleanest rolls that we can have as possible. And that was a mechanism being sold to us to do it, because we were also in another compact with some other states, Kansas and others, about 19 other states. And so we were utilizing both of them, but they weren't keeping up with the technology. And we were finding a lot of errors. But the bottom line is that, have we found some out of state people registered in 2 states through the ERIC system? Yes. Is it enough for me to put our 3.1 million voters' information at risk? No, sir, it's not. I'll find another way to do it. But I will tell you this, and I need folks who are listening to pay attention to this. I need them to write to the governor to support. I'm forgetting the bill. Let me see. I think it's House Bill. Where is it? It's by Les Farnham, and it would allow for me. It would allow for me. I don't have it right here. Oh wait, here maybe. It would. I'll just say it's by Representative Les Farnham, and it would allow me to have a second annual canvass to clean up our rolls. It's based upon a U.S. Supreme Court decision that came out of Ohio before the last presidential. I think it was before the second Obama race or right after, and it it will allow me to clean up the rolls of people I know that they aren't voting, and I don't think that they are still in this state. But the federal government doesn't allow me to remove them just because they don't vote. This would allow me to do direct communication and contact because the postal service isn't doing its job for us, and so I need that tool in our toolbox in order to remove non-voting people on the list, because I'm worried about, and I do watch it, but it doesn't take much for an outside organization to get a voting list, determine that these people may not be on the roll, shouldn't be on the rolls, and then they start voting for them, and then I've got to start investigating. Again, our voting rolls
Right.
are the front door. And you can have all the bells and whistles on every door and window, every alarm system possible known to man. But if your front door's not locked and your alarm's not on, it hadn't done anything for you. And the front door to election integrity is our voter registration list. And I'm committed to having that as up to date as possible.
I just did some quick Googling, so this may not be the bill, but HB 138 by Representative Les Farnham looks, if that's the one, it provides for supplemental annual canvass of registered
That's
voters. Okay. And its current status is vetoed by the governor.
That was last year's.
Okay.
Well,
So
no.
he's.
Oh, wait, did he already veto it?
Well, I don't know. That's what I was trying to look at the dates. Again, I just Googled it real quick. So I was trying to see when it was submitted and all that, and I'm not the best at looking all of this up. Let's see dates.
Well, it just passed.
I think it was last year. I think it was 2021 is the one that I'm looking at.
So the new one just passed today.
Okay.
So it passed the Senate. So now it's headed to the governor's desk, and we need. Strangely enough, it passed without any opposition out of the Senate, which I find very strange. I'll have to go back and look, but that was the report I got. We need that bill. We need House Bill 178 by Representative Villio, which is the constitutional amendment that says you have to be both a United States citizen and a Louisiana citizen to be able to register and vote in the state of Louisiana. That gives us our tool. Obviously, never before has our borders been as open as they are. And if we can't put that into the Constitution, then some local governments would be able to determine that non-citizens could vote, and that would destroy our election integrity in Louisiana.
You got that right. Amen.
And the other one is the Miguez bill, the anti-Zuckerbucks. That's House Bill 811. That's still sitting in the Senate. We need that one as well. That would stop any outside monies from being able to be used in our elections administration processes.
We'll make sure and look those up, and then I'll post that on our Facebook page some point tomorrow anyway, so people can at least go take a look at those and reach out to their legislators and do that process as well.
And while I'm on here, I want to commend your legislative delegation. They take election integrity very seriously. And on a federal level, your Congressman Mike Johnson, I've worked with him tirelessly on efforts. I've consulted him. And so you have a delegation that is very committed to election integrity, and I couldn't be more proud. You've got Representative Dodie Harton, that serves on the committee that oversees elections that I report to all the time. She's a tremendous asset to election integrity efforts and to me and my efforts, and I love working with her.
Excellent. All right.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, we have abused your time. And I could sit here and ask you questions all night long, and I really didn't even get down in the weeds like I wanted to. There was some more detail, but and I think you summed it up best. You said, you were talking about, we all we have to come up with what's best. Not everybody's going to get what they want. I mean, I have the way I would want the system to go, and me and Rex will just have to go out backyard and just settle it. But you know, we it's going to take a lot of us and all of us working together to make sure that we've got a good system. And it can't be just you, the Secretary of State. It takes the constituents of the state. Folks have got to step up and go poll watch. They've got to volunteer and be commissioners.
That's right.
Folks have to do that. I think that is one of our biggest problems is we don't have enough people participating in the process. I mean, agreed?
Agreed, because our commissioners are aging. They're older than they've ever been, and if young people don't start, and when I say young people, I mean our age and down, we've got to step up to the plate. It's a civic duty, and do you have to do it every single election? No, but as Rex knows, the pool is dwindling,
Yes.
and so I had to push for legislation to allow for commissioners in charge who work 2 polling locations to get an extra $50, so I can incentivize them to stick around and not wear them out, because we're running out of commissioners in charge. It's if people want change, as they say they do, and I have no reason not to believe that they do, then we all have to be part of the change, and we all have to do our part. And sometimes it's doing your civic duty. And I know, Rex, it's not easy being on the parish board of election supervisors,
Oh, it's not.
and serving in that capacity. You have long hours, and now we're allowing for processing of ballots earlier because of the increase in absentee balloting. But it's for the good of the republic.
Yeah. And you learn a lot in that process, even if you just go and attend some of those meetings as a member of the public, some of those open meetings. Duke and I gripe about, you look at even some of our city council meetings and our police jury meetings, and, there's only a very small handful of people there, if any. So, look, folks, Secretary Ardoin is right. It is, and Duke, you're absolutely hit the nail on the head. Everybody has to do their part, and that includes the average voting citizen being a part of the process, at least learning a little more about the process, on up into serving. So, yeah, it starts right there. I agree 100%. All right,
And
Mr. Brown.
Well,
I guess the last message I would have is this: don't whatever you see in other states, don't automatically believe that's what's happening in our state. It changes from state to state. In most states, the counties determine how they do things. The counties buy their own equipment. In Louisiana, we do it totally different. We're trying to all do the same thing at the same time. That's the way our laws are built, so that we can express to the voters and they can know the process wherever they live. It's the same one across parishes.
well, I'm about 99% sure that Katie Hobbs and Brad Raffensperger wouldn't commit to bungee jumping with me off the Jimmie Davis Bridge. I'm pretty confident of that.
I was just going to say, y'all could settle it through the bungee jumping.
There you go. That's how we're going to settle this feud.
You go first. Where's my knife?
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Oh, that's hilarious.
All right. Well, I would just like to say, as we kind of wrap this up, Duke, unless you want to, carry on some more or whatever, we've actually done 3-hour shows before, just so you know. But
Oh, wow.
I don't think we're going to attempt that with you tonight.
I'm going to beg off.
Yeah, right. But I would just like to say I appreciate you, of course, coming on the show and spending your time and, explaining some of these things and listening to suggestions. Whether my suggestion gets implemented or not, it's nice to know that at least you listened and, and offered feedback on it. And I would encourage everybody watching, comment, go to the Secretary of State's office, look for the contact stuff. Send our Secretary of State an email. Let him know if you have any questions or problems or, questions about what he or Duke or I said on the show. Reach out and do your part, folks.
Absolutely.
All right. right.
Good night. Thank
Good
you, my
night,
friend.
guys.
All
Thank y'all
right.
so much.
Thank
See y'all
you.
soon. Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye bye. Well, that was
Well, I,
educational for me.
yeah, I made all these notes and I didn't even get to all of them.
Well, I kept clicking over there, but I'll take a little responsibility because I got off, of course, on a fishing tangent and got on my soapbox a little bit. But well, look, the good thing is I don't think we scared him off too much. So maybe we can get the Secretary of State back on again, and we can go on down some of this as we get closer to some elections, maybe.
Yeah, and he hit on all of the things, and the truth of the matter is I mean, he's not solely making the decision.
Right.
They've got a committee down there on the direction that they're going to go, and um, I think probably we're all going to get maybe a little bit of um, you know, some of the recommended changes. I mean, sounds like paper is definitely in the works.
Yeah, and look, I know there's some folks watching. Our good friend Ryan Haygood has been putting some comments, and Ryan, the reason I didn't put some of those comments up is because honestly, we didn't want to do a gotcha. We had a lot more questions about Dominion, but we got off on a few other tangents, and we want to be respectful of the time, so he'll come back, or whatever. Um, so, uh, anyway, I wanted to just address, and we did have some more in-depth questions. We just didn't get to it, but we appreciate all the comments, and we got a couple of dozen people that have been watching now on a Thursday night. So that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, Thursday nights are usually a slow night for whatever reason. Don't know why, but it is, and there's been some dedicated folks watching. I think it was good. I mean, there were a lot of other subjects I wanted to get into. I mean, risk limiting audits. I mean, he did talk about the 2,000 mules.
Yes.
In talking about that, I think that he basically answered some of the first questions I had, which was I
Right.
wanted to get his take on the 2020 election, and by his
Yeah.
response to the 2,000 mules, I think he answered that one pretty clear.
Yeah, and look, to his
Um,
credit, I gave him a complete out when right before I asked him, when I led up to asking him if he watched it. I gave him an out if he didn't want to completely answer that, and he had no problem answering it. So I'll definitely give him credit for that as well.
yeah. So anyway, if folks want to learn a little bit more on all of that, you can go to the legislature's website and go to the video on demand section, and you can look up the Elections Commission videos. And I think if you wanted to see where I think Halderman and even Colonel Waldron testified about systems and what they've seen across the country and some of the experiences. I think that was on the uh, part two of the February of 2022 meeting. You you
Is that
can
the well? Not to interrupt you. Is that the one that we had queued up and replay to show, or is this another meeting?
y- yeah, actually, it's the very first or the second replay one right there.
Okay.
Um,
So I'll tell you
we
what
could
I'll
actually clear.
Well, what I
Go
was going
ahead.
to say that I would do and that I'll commit to doing, may take me a few days, is I'll go back in our notes and I'll take those videos because it's public, and I will cut it up and do those portions that we want people to see so they don't have to try to, scrub through the whole 3 hours or, whatever those meetings are. And we'll post that out there so people can see those sections in shorter chunks on our Facebook page.
Yeah, we can do that. I've already highlighted on the video some of the primary spots for but essentially, Colonel Waldron was articulating, about the five principles of election integrity, talking about, elections, it belongs to the citizens, everybody out there watching, integrity first above all else, and transparency, uh, Secretary Ardoin was articulating that, he just kept harping on transparency, and I wasn't 100% with him on the speed thing. I'm not there, but I think we can go the other direction. I ain't meaning go 5, 10, 20 a month days afterwards. I'm thinking we go the other direction, earlier. Let's free up the folks to be able to start counting those, early early ballots before election day. Let them
Right.
get that out of the way. Why wait till election day?
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
I don't disagree with that at all. Again, like
you
you
know,
said, as long as they sign NDAs and there are repercussions if it gets leaked out, all that good stuff, cross the T's and dot the I's, I don't have any problem with that.
yeah, and the two other main points that Waldron made was decentralization and complexity. He was talking about, we can make things too complex,
Right.
and we're making it too technical. And agreed. And the decentralization, it's kind of like we're putting all of our eggs in one basket. But the problem for us in Louisiana is what we kept talking about: not enough people participate in the process. Because what he was articulating, in the places where he's seen it work the best, you actually had the actual precincts making their counts and turning those numbers in, rather than all those numbers being, shipped out to one central location, and then the counts all going there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'd have to give some thought to that. There's two sides to that. So,
But
but
yep, that's right. That's right.
we got plenty of time to hash that out some more before the next set of elections. So, make for good show content as we lead into the next election cycle.
Absolutely. Well, have a good night, my friend. Thank y'all for
Adios.
watching.
It was fun as usual. I'm going to hit the finish button, folks. We appreciate all of y'all watching and tuning in. And hey, y'all, comment, tag your friends if they're interested in the election process or have doubts about it. There's a lot of us that have had doubts about it. And if you got some more questions you want us to ask, let us know, and we'll try to get them queued up for the next time. See y'all later.
Good night.